Welcome to the Arena Decklist Podcast. I'm Jerry Thompson, joined by Brian Gottlieb, and I don't think we have a ton to talk about in the beginning of the show.
All right, let's wrap it up then. Nice joining
in the
today.
beginning, Brian.
My mistake.
There's still, dude, I know you're eager to get out of here and do God knows what, yell at people on the internet. I don't know.
No,
but
I've done enough of that this week.
Yeah, not a ton to talk about, and we haven't talked about Pioneer in a while. So I just knew for the last few weeks, I mean, obviously there was like the Standard Pro Tour, which we didn't really talk about Standard that much because a bunch of other stuff happened, but it's been a minute since we talked about Pioneer, and I think it's time.
Yes, looking forward to checking in on the format. Came dangerously close to playing a Pioneer event this past weekend. By dangerously close, I mean I located my deck, which was untouched for approximately 6 months, confirmed it was there. Yeah, that's as far as I got. I mean, I did have the thought process, and I looked.
Yeah,
for it.
You thought about it.
Yeah, but after that, I gave up.
Why?
I don't know, man. It was nice out. I was doing some work around the house. The pond is in its stage where it requires a lot of maintenance right now. There's like this algae bloom going on where I have to run a big razor across the bottom of the pond, and then I take this huge rake and I just dig wheelbarrows full of this seaweedy type material out and haul it for 8 hours a day to the back of my woods. So
no thanks.
I got a full schedule right now.
Okay. Well, the upcoming RC is Pioneer, and there are some RCQs going on right now, some of which are Pioneer. So
I didn't realize we were this far out on RCQs. So the RCQs going on now qualify you for the event in December.
Yes.
Quite a stretch.
It is a stretch. I guess this is like 3 PTs a year territory, right?
But do these RCQs run for a little bit long? Like, when does the season end? Is my question, I guess.
I honestly don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I know that they were about 3 months long.
Okay, so they're a pretty long season.
Yeah, it's long-ish. I mean, it's not 7 months long or whatever.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there is a bit of a lull in there probably, but like if they wanted to stretch out this season, I could totally see that too.
But you're always looking at it, like, is the general time frame, you're always looking about 3 to 4 months until you're the event you've qualified for?
Like, I have won this tournament and now I just sit for 4 months.
Yeah.
I mean, if
like, how long was it for the one you won?
Well, I didn't go to the RC, so I don't really know, but I also
Okay.
won like the first week.
Yeah.
Right. So like, yeah, you have the entire rest of the season and then maybe a little bit of lead time. But like, I guess, for example, for this one, the season ended in April, like the beginning of April, and then the RC is beginning of June.
Okay.
So yeah, a couple months, maybe, if you win the last one.
So this long stretch is not the ordinary approach. I'm just trying to like understand their time frame and like how often they fire and how long the average wait periods are and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know. We were talking about this a little bit before the cast too. Is like all this stuff is tied to DreamHack.
Yes, so that
Right.
probably dictates a lot of that, right? Just like when is the next DreamHack scheduled in a location we want to go to?
Right, because I can't imagine that DreamHack is making their schedule based around like the regional championships or whatever. So.
Definitely not.
No. So, I don't know, interesting stuff happening in Pioneer. And I think the biggest way to just get the best way to get the big picture of the format is just good old deck dump.
Love it. That's where we get into the good nonsense that's going on. We'll see the top decks as well. I think this is exactly what I need to get me back up to speed. And you forbid me from doing any research. I haven't been allowed to look at these deck lists ahead of time. So I get flash reactions put forth.
Yeah, there are a couple cool things. It's not quite like Modern where it's like, oh my God, like look at these decks, right? There are a couple cool things that I didn't want you to be spoiled on.
Okay. I'm excited to see what we have in store.
And unfortunately, the first list that we get into is just a normal looking
I've seen this
Rakdos mid-range from Myra 00. One Invasion of Asgol, which is the Edict.
Yep.
And other than that, normal.
Forgetting about that one Shieldred in the sideboard too. Just plain old Shieldred.
Oh,
not
okay.
the Apocalypse.
True. I mean, Children's good. It's just
Yeah,
not.
that card's doing exactly what I thought it would, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
yeah. It's just not as fancy as, oh, like you got some battles in your deck now. But like the battles have been doing pretty well in Pioneer, all
Yep.
things considered. So
Yeah, pretty well in multiple formats. They seem to be a successful experiment thus far.
yeah. I guess what I've been doing recently is playing limited. You know,
Mhm.
there
I've
was
heard a lot of good things about this limited format. Are you as much of a fan as some other folks are? Like I've heard actual GOAT limited format statements before.
it is really good. I do enjoy it, and the battles I wouldn't say are like a big part of it, but it does add a very cool, like very impactful layer to the format.
Hmm.
It's just like it's just one of those kind of like guiding lights as to like what the format is about. And I don't know, just it makes it feel like certainly there are a lot of cards that are, the classic like creature 2-for-1 sort of thing. It's really tough to run out of gas, period. But then when you add the battles into the format also, and then you give the format like a bunch of, not a bunch, but like a decent amount of good fixing and like multicolored cards. It's just like you don't run out of gas. The mana's pretty good. You have a lot of agency over like how you build your deck and like what sorts of cards you include, what sort of strategy you're trying to do and stuff. So I like it a lot. Battles are a pretty big part of it, and I'm happy to see them show up in constructed, especially like going back into older formats.
Yeah, let me ask a further question, two-part question. Uh, One, would you be happy if battles are just evergreen and in every set going forward? And two, do you think they will be?
Um, I would not be surprised if it's something like every other set,
Mhm.
or at least because so they're DFCs, right? And I mean, obviously these are battle sieges that could change into something else. I don't know, but the requirement to have like DFCs in every set might be kind of high. I don't know.
I don't feel like it is any like such a high percentage do you have DFCs at this point. Um, yeah, I will say I wish that sometimes Magic showed a little bit more restraint with their cool ideas. Like there's a lot of ideas that have been very cool that just get kind of run into the ground. They get run into the ground quickly. So this being a cool idea, I think it would be more exciting if you just didn't do it all the time. As far as what I predict they will do, a lot of the groundwork they laid seem to be setting up for this to be like a pretty permanent thing. So I
Yeah.
think I'm expecting to see more battles sooner rather than later. I don't know if I'm of the opinion they're going to be in every set going forward. We'll
Yeah,
see.
I don't think that they drop this and then immediately cool off on it.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they're going to be in at least the next few sets going forward, which
Yep.
means that there'll be a lot of them.
That is
Uh,
my guess as well.
but I'm fine with it. I think that it would be more weird to have like a random bomb battle in limited. It's just like, think about the
Hmm.
older formats where your opponent has a planeswalker and you're just like, oh, I wasn't ready to deal with this because this is not a normal part of the format, you know?
Yeah,
And
but don't battles kind of fix that issue to some degree? Like they engage on the very typical axis of the game.
I mean, yes and no, but it's like if when a format is about battles, you understand that it's not, so like traditional limited is slowly kind of like building up and
Hmm.
getting to a point where you can either like outlast your opponent or kind of like turtle up behind something for a while until your more powerful cards take over. But battles very much like either if you're putting them in your deck or like trying to defend them, like certain things matter a lot where it's like, well, being able to curve out matters a lot more, and maybe having some sort of way to gain evasion might matter a little bit more, or like ways to defend against flyers, et cetera, et cetera. And like those things come up uh also when you're fighting against like a random planeswalker, right? Whereas you might not include like a +2/+2 and flying combat trick in your sealed deck because it's just like a little weak on average. But like when you know that you're going to be fighting over like battles or whatever, it becomes maybe like a little bit more important than it was, right?
Hmm.
So they just like fundamentally change how you build your sealed decks and what sort of cards you include and things like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So when they're a big part of the format, I think it's fine if it's
Then you just build
driving
around it.
a
Yeah,
lot of the
I
stuff that you're
understand what you're
doing.
saying.
That's all I'm saying. Anyway, this is a little off topic.
Yeah, as things usually go.
Yes.
We almost made it through a full deck without going off topic.
Almost. Anyway, deck number 2, Tia 93, Mattia Rizzi. Is it creativity? A lot of different versions of this. This one is interesting because the creatures are 2 Atraxa Grand Unifier. So creativity for 1 is, I mean, I guess you could do it for 2 and just like let the other Atraxa die and you just draw 30 cards or whatever. But
yeah,
I don't know. It's weird where you could play Transmogrify and maybe better mana, but it feels like a lot of the lands you want to play are just going to be like, is it dual lands anyway? So how much are you really costing yourself by playing creativity instead of Transmog? And then you get the additional benefit of you're not always locked into like a single target thing.
Yeah, there's also something interesting going on too, which is something we haven't talked about all that much because we just like kind of see Atraxa and we're like, oh yeah, obviously Atraxa is the best thing you can ramp into, accelerate into, cheat out. But your Atraxa hits suck in this deck. Like they're just so bad. Like you don't want another creativity after you've put your first Atraxa out. Maybe one is fine, but like
I think it's if you okay. So first of all, creativity hits artifacts, right? So I guess that's an added benefit too. Whereas Transmog is only creatures. So okay, yeah. I get it. That's fine. But yeah, I think if you do it for 1, you get your Atraxa, and then you have backup creativity for if your Atraxa dies. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
Like if you hit one of the creativities, but like my point is you're not putting many cards into your hand with Atraxa. Like it just doesn't work that way.
It's probably 4. Well, I mean, it's probably 3. But
yeah, I mean it's like max 4, right?
Yeah.
Like I guess you could hit second Atraxa, but
you could, but even then you probably
don't want to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's this one's weird. It's just like, okay, big Baneslayer Angel is the thing that we want to go with. And
yeah, that's my point. Like I know you don't have to build around like maximizing your Atraxa hits. That is completely not necessary. But it just stands out as particularly bad in this deck, your Atraxa hits. And you know, that doesn't necessarily matter, but it is something worth noting.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as splashy as Xenagos World Spineworm or whatever.
Yeah.
But if there's a lot of aggro decks, I think that turtling up behind this thing is pretty reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how castable is this thing? Not very. I mean,
not. I think it's not. Yeah.
Fable can get there, and then you have a little help from Prismari Command, but that's about it.
Yeah. All right. Maybe it does happen from time to time.
Dude, Fable fixes all problems.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, this one is interesting, and I trust Mattia, honestly.
Yep. Well, that's fair.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this is pretty normal. I think that this is definitely a good thing to be doing in the format, and I think if you're able to solve all the problems with Izzet cards in general, then I think you're just gonna have like the best deck in the room, almost certainly.
A lot of powerful stuff going on here for sure.
Yeah. Next up, Gruul Aggro, a Crowan War, Asika's Chariots, etc.
Yeah, not a lot of change in this deck. I still don't see a lot of reason to play it, but here it is. I mean, if you want to finish your leads really fast, that's cool.
Yeah. No, I mean that definitely matters if you're just the sort of person who's on there grinding for the sake of grinding and not necessarily like trying to have the best win rate or learn the most. Or if you just want to play like Elf into a 3-drop and beat the crap out of people. I think that's
feels good sometimes.
Yeah. Izzy 90, Blue White Control, Brian. There's gonna be a lot of Blue White Control in this deck.
Okay. Though. I'm happy to hear that.
It's gotten better. I've not been a fan of this archetype.
Yeah, what exactly has gotten better? Because this deck looks still very not good to me. and that's I'm saying that as someone who played this deck a lot and like enjoyed playing this deck a lot, but acknowledged it was still very not good.
3 things. 1, most of these decks are only playing 60 cards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a big get, because then you get to play the best 4-mana sorceries that you could possibly want. Number 2 is make disappear as a viable 2-mana counterspell versus just relying on censor or the various flavors of negate.
Sure.
The other thing is lay down arms.
Yeah, lay down arms is a big get.
And it's weird because then you have to play things like Prairie Stream. But 26 lands, 18 of them, I believe, are plains. And you're not really looking for a lightning bolt sort of thing, like a turn 1 removal spell out of this card. It's more so just that on, turns 4, 5, 6, you get to double spell with regularity.
Yes, efficiency is very big in this type of setup.
And if you're investing a bunch of mana into like casting a Memory Deluge, you need ways to catch back up. And finding some cheap cards off your Memory Deluge is the best way to do so.
Yeah, 18 planes, not bad either. I wish we could get to 19, but we do have the Castle Vantress in there, which we can never cut under any circumstances.
Listen, there is a lot of stuff with this mana base where I'm like, really? Like you're playing this over
just
a plains?
Nothing we can do. Hands are tied, Gerald.
Like the Arden Veil, I understand is a card that is relatively important or can be, but like the Castle Vantress is just like, cut that for a Fabled Passage, please.
Seems uncuttable. I don't know.
Or another Hall of the Storm Giant, whatever. I don't know, man. What? I don't get it. Anyway, yeah, I think the deck has gotten better. That said, I'm still not a fan. I would much rather be doing like control-y stuff plus explosive top end, not control-y stuff. Sure hope that, I don't know, your deck kind of ceases to function after I deal with the first couple things, and I will slowly kill you with the Wandering Emperor. I don't really like that plan too much.
It's hard for me to talk myself into pure control when there exists viable combo control.
Yeah.
Like I think that just is almost always a better approach. So.
Yes. Is it over Azorius for life?
For now. I'm not going to say for life. You haven't convinced me that hard. But.
For life. All right. Next up, the JK Kid Mono Blue Spirits. 6 Curiosities.
Mm-hmm.
21 land, 24 creatures, Lofty Denial, Geistlight Snare, slip out the back. This seems pretty normal to me.
Yeah, nothing too exciting going on here. A lot of what this has picked up, it picked up in some previous sets, and things like removal spells with witness protection. And at some point, you'll just get enough of these weirdo cards where this deck will be legitimately good. And I do think it's a hard out for a few decks in the format. Like it does target some specific things very, very well. And then other things it just completely folds to. So,
yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a successful deck, like a deck where I'm just like, that was, the best list of like the best deck in the format where it has copies of Sleep in it. And this one has 2 copies of Sleep in the sideboard. It feels like if you're at the point where you have to take those measures.
Yes, Sleep points to a problem you cannot actually solve.
Right. It's like, oh, well, this is the best ththing at doing it. It's like, yeah, you're still going to lose.
Just don't do it. Stir up your other matchups. Do something else.
I've done it. I've played Sleep, and it literally never works.
No, not
solve your problem some other way. Next up is a deck from Mevignon, 60 cards. And when you see Carnival Carnage, you know it's Karuga. And this is Fires of Invention, Enigmatic Incarnation, Domain thing. Enchantments plus Birthing Pod targets, effectively.
Yeah. I think I have said my piece on these type of decks. Like they sidestep part of what the format is about. They ask for a very specific term of engagement from your opponent, and this feels like the type of thing where you make a meta call, and if you make a good read on the field, you end up with a bunch of really, really easy matchups. You hope to dodge the few bad ones in the room. That's the type of role this deck is always going to fill in my eyes.
Yeah, I like this deck in general, but it does feel like it kind of has the blue-white-ish problem where it's like, finally, I've like wrested control from you. And there's like this 3-turn window where you're like, I hope they don't kill me somehow.
Yeah. Let's see you beat this Katose the Silent Spider. And that's your best offer. And you're like, oh, you did it. Okay. Well,
I will say the Katose is like one of the few cards in the deck that actually might be able to just like lock it up against someone. You know, it's like you've managed to not die, and now you just need the way to like, I don't know, make it so they don't kill you with a top deck or like assembling their combo or whatever. And like this card is actually a clever ad, I think. But
okay.
not saying it's good, not saying it actually solves the problem, but like I get why it's there. And it
I'm getting some sleep vibes from this card, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, you might be right about that, but I don't know, man. Just Karuga in general, I just kind of despise too. But I will say that this deck gets around it in a pretty nice way by being able to play stuff like Leyline Binding, right?
Yeah. No, these decks have gotten better at cheating that problem for sure.
But Carnival Carnage, not great. It does kill elves if you're really worried about elves, but it doesn't kill things like Monastery Swiftspear or whatever. So
Yep.
it's always going to be a little sussy to me.
Yep, I understand.
Okay. Next up, interesting one from Dimitri QED. Blue Black. There has been a rogue's resurgence in Pioneer.
Yeah.
Did you know this?
Yes, I did know that. On the back of Fairy Mastermind for the most part.
Yeah. And this one is a Fairy Mastermind deck, but not a rogues deck. It is Suspicious Stowaway, Graveyard Trespasser, Mastermind, 3 Shieldred, 2 Tassiger, and then blue and black cards.
Yeah. Strong cards. I mean, powerful cards. I mean, at least cards that were powerful when I was good at Magic, so maybe not powerful anymore.
Push, Thoughtseize, Liliana, Make Disappear, Spell Pierce. I don't know. Just a little blue-black tempo deck.
Yeah. I mean, what's been your opinion of Fairy Mastermind playing with and against it? It has gotten a lot of love in older formats. It is a card that stood out to me as just like one of the most exciting cards in a long time for its simplicity more than anything else, and just like how quickly it captures a very elegant gameplay style, a very simple gameplay style. I don't know that I expected it to be as good as it has proven to be. Like I thought it would be solid, but it's proven to be a lot better than that.
I don't know. I've mostly been disappointed with like the 2 mana, 2 power flyer sort of thing. It just seems like a little too weak in the aggregate. But certainly there's a lot more going on here than just that,
Yeah, I mean, how often does that clause, the draw a card clause, how often are you working for that? And how often is that just like annoying free roll that you're slotting into your deck?
I mean, I think when you add 4 copies of this to your deck, you don't have to work super hard into playing a big, like this would be like the old standard example. I'm not saying you should apply this here, but like the Scarab God type of thing. It's like you don't really need a top end when you have this to kind of bail you out in the mid to late. Like this is your Castle Lockthwain on a card that you would hopefully already be wanting to put in your deck,
Okay.
So
I mean, I guess
like
this card does look most exciting to me in the decks that are actually utilizing mana on their opponent's turns very well. Like I want this to be in more tempo oriented decks and like less just, I don't know, good card decks. And this one seems to kind of hedge the difference. Like there are the Spell Pierces, Make Disappears. They're certainly wanting to play that game, but there's also things like Liliana's and then your 3 mana and 4 mana drops. So it's kind of playing back and forth with those ideas, which is fine. If you get that mix right, you can absolutely do it. I suspect the best shell, though, would be a little bit more singular in its focus.
Maybe. I don't know. We poo-poo on Graveyard Trespasser all the time. I basically poo-poo on Suspicious Stowaway a decent amount. I know that you were a fan of that card, but despite it making it into like Vintage Cube or whatever, I don't know if it was Vintage Cube or Legacy Cube or both. It's just like, I don't really like this card. But I think we could maybe do a little bit better than this, but certainly there is some appeal in just like, all right, good black mid-range threats. Some of these Rakdos decks are splashing counterspells to deal with things like Lotus Field a little bit better and like the 4-mana enchantment decks and stuff like that. And this is just like, well, can we just cut out, you know, I want to say the middleman, but it's Fable the Mirrorbreaker, right? Like that is the card that
fair enough.
You're basically getting rid of, and it's like, technically you can. I don't know if that's the best way to go about things, but you can do that.
If you want to save on tickets, I'm assuming Fable the Mirrorbreaker's a lot of tickets.
So. It was 60 at some point. I don't know what it is now. I'm a check. I'm curious. 47.
Okay, very reasonable price.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Next up, King Harry. 9 swamps, but 4 Hive of the Eye Tyrant, 4 Castle Locthwain. 4 Castle Locthwain with 9 swamps, really?
That's
4
fine.
Mutavault, 1 Takenuma, 4 Crypt Breaker, baby.
Yeah, zombie time.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the zombie guy. You got to be excited about this one.
I am. Razor Lash Transmogrant.
Is a zombie. Very nice.
Artifact Zombie. Again, I don't know what that means, but it is technically a zombie. So that gives you a little bit more of a beatdown stance. Couple Lord of the Accursed, Champion of the Perished, Graph Reaver, Kill a Planeswalker. Yeah, I don't know. This seems fine, aside from the weird mana base, which I'm not a fan of. Like, you have 12 1-drops, you know? Like, I get Castle Locthwain is just the best thing of all time, but like 4 Castle, 4 Hive, that's a lot.
Asking a lot, for sure.
I like this. I'm curious if we can get away from Relentless Dead a little bit. 4 always seemed like a lot of that. Dark Salvation's really good. This deck only has 2 copies, but I don't know. I like this.
Feels
I'm tempted.
Lot like a standard deck. Feels a lot like a standard deck.
It does, but again, you got push and Thoughtseize. You know, you can kind of do whatever you want from there.
That's true. That'll steal you a lot of 5-0s in leagues. That's for sure.
All right. IZ. Similar approach. A lot of planes, a lot of humans, including Coppercoat Vanguard. Is this the card? Yeah. 1 dub, 2/2. Human soldier. Each other human you control gets +1/+0 and has ward 1.
Oh, this is our Aftermath friend, right?
It is our Aftermath friend. So
nice.
Humans has had many forms in Pioneer, and I think now with this card, there is enough power level to the point where you need to make a very compelling argument to be anything other than just mono white.
Yeah, is the argument that like ossification is your best removal spell when you're mono white? Like is that just acceptable for this format?
I think so. I mean, it's not great. It's not perfect. Ideally, you would have like a 1 or 0 mana removal spell, but ossification is quite good.
This deck, yeah, I guess you can't play late on arms because you're trying to race. Are you trying to race, or are you actually trying to just like build a large battlefield presence and actually late on arms would be better?
Yeah, depends on the matchup. I mean, I could see something like you could sideboard some lay down arms or something.
Yeah. That's interesting.
But
There are
like
portable holes in the sideboard.
Yeah.
Other cheaper removals.
Like removing a Kiora instead of having to attack it a bunch of times is certainly reasonable. And like,
yeah, that's true.
When you're playing 4 Mutavaults, how often are you actually going to get to remove like an Old Growth Troll or Cavalier of Thorns or whatever?
Yeah, I'm
right?
not sure.
It's just like having the actual hard removal spell when things get pretty big, and like Shieldred's certainly a big difficult to remove thing with 5 toughness, right? So
yep, that's fair.
So I don't know. 2 mana, definitely a little clunky, especially, you're playing Thalia in your deck too, so could cause some problems there. But
if I wanted to buy a Coppercoat Vanguard, what would that cost me? I'm just curious what like cards from Aftermath are costing.
Yeah, I mean it's an uncommon, but
right.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's 49 cents in its base form. Same price in foil as it is in non-foil. Goes to 75 cents for foiled etch. If you're curious about the Showcase Halo foil, that's going to be $5. Now, if you only want Showcase, that's 75 cents. Of course, if you want the Showcase foil, not alternate foil, that's going to be $1.
Dude, Calm down.
Sorry.
Okay.
I just thought we were talking about the price of the 6 copper code Vanguards that exist.
Oh, okay. Prices for Aftermath stuff seem pretty reasonable, at least for singles.
Yeah, they do. Tells me that enough is being opened. Nissa proving to be the most expensive card, it looks like.
A lot of elemental love.
Yeah. Yep, that makes sense.
Anyway.
That's also interesting because that shows that, prices on this set being dictated by older formats, as you would expect. Like, nothing has changed here.
Right. Anyway, I like mono white a decent amount. I don't think it is, tier 1 like it seemed like for a little bit there when it was like, oh, this is the answer to mono green or whatever, but this is a fine choice.
Yeah, it seems powerful to me. Powerful options.
All right, Blink_us. Enigmatic Incarnation, Touch the Spirit Realm, Karuga in the sideboard. This one with Bone Crusher Giant instead of Carnival Carnage, and no spicy Katoses or anything, but
yep.
Yeah, I guess this is very little black. There's a single Rafine's Tower, and that's it.
A pretty similar approach, but just some, what is it? You have to be 10 cards different? Is that the correct count these days?
That's what it used to be. I don't know what the deal is anymore, because like I said, there are a lot of blue-white decks that show up.
Yeah, this looks 10 cards different to me, but we'll keep an eye on that as we move through.
I think it was before it was like non-land cards too. So,
is that true?
I thought it was, but
yeah, I honestly don't know.
All right, Mattia P9, another blue-white control deck. This one with 2 copies of Chrome Host Seed Shark.
And can you explain this card to me? This card is one that I do not get.
The Shark rules.
Shark rules. Okay. It's that simple, I guess.
Yes. There will be no Seed Shark slander on this podcast.
Yeah, but it's just like a stupid 2/4 that, I don't know, man. No immediate impact unless you play it in the late game, which you can always do, and I understand that. And so is this like your 5-drop? Is that what the plan is here?
No. This is 4 toughness on turn 3. Pioneer has some issues in regards to like removal sizing.
And this is how we're countering 3/2s and whatnot, like things like Blood Tithe Harvester.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
This is not dying to Bone Crusher Giant. This is very difficult to kill with Fatal Push.
Well, that's cool. I mean, honestly, the way I look at cards nowadays, like that's how I used to look at cards. Be like, oh, this sizing is very important for this format. And now it's like, shut up, idiot. It doesn't matter what size it is. It matters, like, does it draw you 14 cards when it comes into play? That's how you determine if a card is good or not. But
and it does.
If sizing matters, eventually it could. But if sizing is the main thing driving this card, then I'm excited to hear that. And I believe it, because it is a quite relevant sizing when you think about the other stuff that matters.
So my issues with the previous blue-white control decks were, again, that like, oh, I kind of took control and now you have a few turns to turn it all around. This thing closes the door pretty quickly. And there are some weirdo backdoor combos with like March of Otherworldly Light, where it's just like, if you want to just jam on this thing, like you can.
Yeah, okay.
So
it's cute.
I'm not saying that is a reason to play it, but if I had a choice between playing blue-white, basically no creatures, or playing blue-white with this sort of like monastery mentor plus aspect, where it's like, well, you can actually kind of go beat down, or you can have this thing that is, it has utility as a finisher and as a blocker early game. Like this can be a defensive spell if you want.
It is funny that you referenced Monastery Mentor, because you could just play that, right? Like you actually are choosing to play Seed Shark over that.
Yeah, but Mentor dies to everything. And you could play Mentor before. Like Mentor dies to everything and it doesn't block well.
Yep.
So this gives the deck another angle. Like this is the sort of card that, oh, maybe you would like sideboard in against Rakdos because you expect them to take out all the removal or whatever, but it generally doesn't matter. And most of the high-level tournaments you play these days are just open deckless anyway, so who cares? Like, it doesn't really matter. And if you don't have much to do on turn 3 and you jam a Seed Shark and they power word kill it or something, like that's still a fine mana exchange for you. And that's all you're trying to really do is buy time. It's not like, oh, I enabled their card that would be previously dead. It's like 8 of their lands are creatures or whatever. So it like they're not going to get caught with a dead card necessarily. And that's going to be the difference maker, right? And they also have like Bankbuster and Blood and
Yeah,
Fable and
dead
whatnot to
cards
sift
don't
through all that
exist.
stuff. So nothing
Yep.
is dead anymore.
Yep. Okay, you did a good job selling me. I'm also intrigued because I feel like I could buy just like 3 cards and have this deck and be ready to play it, and I wouldn't have to think much either because I can just play decks like this in my sleep. So this is a potential candidate should I attend a Pioneer tournament for me to play with.
Cool. Also, this one has 2 copies of Change the Equation and 3 Make Disappear, not messing around with any sensors, which I like a lot, and Change the Equation is pretty solid. And then this one is also trimming on absorbs by a lot. There's only 1 copy, and I think that's great.
Yeah, that card always felt very clunky to me.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely, you play against mono red and your mono red opponent doesn't know that absorb exists or whatever. Like, yeah, it might be the best card of all time, but it's a really hard to cast cancel, and you're already playing like some copies of Field of Ruin. So there's just a lot that could go wrong. It's just really clunky, and I like just getting away from the cancel aspect, being a little bit leaner.
Yep, makes sense to me.
Yes. I don't know. It's like the main deck is like pretty smart. So I'm looking at the sideboard, looking for inspiration, and it's just like, there's some weird stuff here, but I'm just gonna assume that this person knows what they're doing.
I always take the opposite assumption, but in this case, I'm willing to do that.
Well, just based on their main deck, I'm like, oh, okay, like this seems heads up. No Castle Vantress. I'm in.
Now they're really blackballed as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Protopulse, mono green, now with Plukernos Reborn.
And a Vorinclex.
I guess.
I just like saying Vorinclex now that I know how to say it, so I bring it up whenever I can.
Yeah, congrats.
What's your stance on this deck now? Has anything shifted? Do you believe in it more? Do you believe in it less? I mean, Plukernos is obviously a significant pickup.
Yeah. I think that certainly Rakdos is the default, like, you're going to have to beat this a bunch of times if you want to win a tournament kind of thing. But mono green is still the litmus test for the format, I think, as far as different sorts of things that you have to interact with and what sort of clock you have to put your opponent on, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that right now people are kind of sleeping on this when maybe they shouldn't be, but also it does look like just a lot of the decks have gotten better in general to the point where you don't have to try as hard to beat this, but you still do have to respect it.
I like that I don't have to think about sideboarding when I play this deck. Just good to go.
No, that's fair, but you have to think about, the different variations of things to do when you have like 8 mana, 9 mana, 10 mana, every single difference in mana and what your opponent has, what you have. It's infinite possibilities. So yeah, you don't have to sideboard. It's just when you play the actual games, your brain gets fried.
Well, I just consent to doing that wrong. Like, that's fine. And then I'll move on from there.
But you could do that with sideboarding.
Oh, I could. That's true.
So what's the difference? I don't get it.
I don't know, man. I'm here for a good time, not a long time, Gerald. I'm trying to find ways to simplify my engagement with Magic. I want sideboard guides. I want fewer sideboard decisions. I want to pop in, not have to rebuild my deck, and just be good to roll.
Well, it sounds like you were able to do that if you had wanted to with your 6-month-old Lotus Field deck. But
well, I started thinking about that one card that Lotus Field has added since then. I don't have impulses either. I probably do have old impulses somewhere.
Yeah, you just gotta find them.
Yeah.
Next deck is from Dead Baby Unicorn. Quite sad. Rakdos, sacrifice 3 Obnixilis Captive Kingpin.
Yay, we did it. We called this one. I don't know that it was a big leap, but I'm excited to see this card, and I believe it's probably pretty good here.
Yeah.
Exactly here.
I do too. I don't think that this is how I would build these decks. Like, I don't know. Epicures and Blood Tithe Harvesters. 2 copies of Obnixilis the Adversary with not a lot of good ways to enable that either. I don't know.
Dude, I just want 1-drops. I want so many 1-drop. Like, I want to max my Cauldron Familiars. I want to max my Epicures, probably. I just like having these hands that say, okay, I will always be able to play all my cards, and then the value inherent in my deck is what pulls me ahead. I need some expensive things, but as little as possible, just so I have absolute fluidity across my turns and doing multiple things. And I think like Ob fits that bill very well. Like we talked about it in comparison to something like Corvold. I think this is the perfect curve topper. So I'm completely fine just being like, I play some Obs, I play some Fables, and probably some Blood Tithe Harvesters too. I think it's just kind of too good not to play. But for the most part, like everything else is ones or at the core of my engine, something like Mayhem Devil.
Harvester's good for sure. I still like Priest of Forgotten Gods, and especially going through a lot of these decks, a lot of them are creature based, but
yeah,
I don't know. Sideboard is interesting because it is a Gigantha deck, and the card that I wanted back in the day, this was probably about the time that you were playing Lotus Field, was a threaten for mono green to get rid of the bigger stuff, because the actual terminates are not that plentiful or good. And Kerry Zev's expertise at the time was the best one. But now I think there's just like the new threaten that gives you a treasure if it hits them or whatever. It's like that one seems pretty reasonable to the point where you don't have to compromise Gigantha, even though Gigantha is not necessarily that big of a deal in the mono green matchup or whatever. But anyway, this deck has 1 Necromentia and 1 Meathook Massacre that disable the Gigantha. So it's interesting to see that there are matchups where it's like, oh, I want this one card that is just going to shut off my companion, but we're still playing the one companion,
Man, I'm just thinking about, so I've never played a companion in paper before. Never done it. And now I'm just thinking about the realities of like,
I reveal my Gigantha and then cast a BB card.
Yeah, like I would certainly do that. And it's not because I'm malicious, it's because I'm an idiot.
Right.
And I like, there's no question I would have done that if I was dabbling in companions these days. And
I'm terrified of it.
Yeah, it seems really dangerous. There's so many problems with the companion mechanic, to say nothing of just like how they impacted the game. Just, man, what a bad idea.
I will reveal Gigantha. Okay. Does your deck fit the criteria? It's like, yes, source. Yes. Trust me, bro.
I would never lie to you.
Yeah. Come on. We're all friends here, right? Next deck is another blue-eye control deck. No sharks, 2 absorbs. Okay. So we're not all 4 absorb gamers. I do like that. Decent amount of make disappears, 1 change the equation. This seems pretty reasonable to me outside of the omnipresent Castle Ventress.
What about those regal carousels in the sideboard? Is that how you pronounce that word? Caracal?
I think it's Caracal.
Okay.
It's technically a card. It is legal tender. Like you can put it in your deck.
Gets pumped by your Kahira that you have in the sideboard, another fine companion.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's the reason to not play the shark, I guess. You have Kahira to charge up your marches or whatever, but I don't know if this is like for a mono red thing, or you just want like a bunch of different cards for Rakdos. Like, oh, you have a Fable? Well, I have like a 5-mana worse Fable.
Yeah, this card can't beat anything in Pioneer. There's no way. Like, not fair.
I don't know. It's not. I've seen worse. I will say that. But
okay, ringing endorsement.
It is very Sleep-esque, where it's like, if this is how you're solving your problems, it's probably not great. It does not bode well for you.
Seems correct.
All right, Loggerbond, 16 mountains, a lot of goblins, 2 Embercleaves.
Just checking the goblins here, seeing who we're working with.
Rundvelt Hordemaster is the good one.
Yeah, that's the big one. That's the ad. But this is just goblins straight up, right? There's nothing tricky I'm missing about this deck. It's just I play my goblins and I attack you.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. Can we go to the next one then? Because that does not do it for me. I got to tell you.
I don't mind goblins. I don't think it's terrible. For whatever that's worth.
Would you ever register it for a tournament?
Probably not for a big event, but so like when we lived in Seattle, and occasionally we would go to mocks, right?
Yep.
If I had all the cards for this deck, or if I was only missing like some Horde Masters or whatever,
ready and out on your desk, not like if they're put away, you wouldn't go get this deck.
No. I'm saying if I had to like dig up all the stuff and acquire 4 Horde Masters or whatever, I would show up to a random weekly with this.
I don't know. This is the type of thing that I would like talk myself into once every 6 months, and then I'd play the event and I'd be like, that was dumb. Why did I just spend my time doing that?
It's fun, man. Life is about experiences, right? You don't necessarily have to check every single experience off the list, but generally, the more you diversify, the more kind of like full your life gets.
Oh, that's a nice growth mindset, Gerald. And I'm happy to see you bring that to your Magic deck selection. Of course, this is all theoretical Magic deck selection because neither of us leaves our house to play Magic events anyway. So
correct.
Yeah, that makes it easier to expand your horizons a little bit more.
Hey, I will say last weekend, I think it was last weekend. I don't know what time is.
Did you also think about playing a Magic tournament?
I literally did. I just didn't leave my house for it. I qualified for the arena qualifier.
Oh, that's right. You're back in the MPL. I forgot about that.
Yes. I played that for about an hour. And then there's an arena open this weekend that's also sealed that I'm going to be playing in. Assuming
I might play that.
Assuming that I'm conscious at 9 a.m.
Yeah, I can see playing that. I like the arena opens. They're good.
Yeah, that's solid. I'll ping you. I'll see if you're awake. See if you want to battle. Send you a little reminder.
Yeah, give it a shot.
All right, next up, Bob 49. This is it. This is your time to shine, Brian.
Ready to go, baby.
4 Lotus Fields.
Not a lot has changed. You love to see it. Keep it simple. Get out there, Lotus Field some people.
Make it so I could just keep the same 75 cards in my deck box for 6 months.
That one up. I'm looking. I don't have Dragon Lord Dromokas in my deck box right now, nor do I have Zakamas.
Well, thankfully, you don't necessarily need them.
Yeah, I don't feel like I do. And I would have to go find my impulses, like I said, but I think that's manageable. So yeah, we're pretty much ready to go here. Ready to play this deck again. I don't know if it's good. It can't be bad. It's never going to be bad. That's my opinion on Lotus Field. It's always going to be a check.
It's kind of similar to how I feel about Mono Green. Maybe not the default best thing to be doing, but it is a litmus test of the format. And you might not play against it in any given tournament, but you should be prepared for it.
Yeah, Pika said he came to my neck of the woods here in upstate New York and showed up for like a 30-person 2-slotter, and there was many Lotus Fields in the room, which I almost added to.
I believe there's 3 of them, which is a decent amount for 32 people, but...
Yeah, 10% of the field? That's got to be about average. That can't be that low, right? Is it fewer than 10% of the field playing Lotus Field?
Yeah, I think that's high.
That's weird to me. What was it at the last PT? It was above like 15%, right?
Pro Tours and RCQs are much different.
Point taken. That is fair.
We've talked before about how no one wants to test with or against Lotus Field, right? Yep. So,
yeah.
And it's just like a bunch of weird ass cards, right? It's like, what are the odds that you buy all the Horde Masters and pile drivers you need to like fill out your Pioneer collection? You know, it's the same deal with Lotus Field. It's like, am I going to own, like, you don't even have Zakama and Dromoka and the random crap that the kids are playing these days. So.
I think I have them. I don't have them in my Lotus Field deck box right now, but I think I own these cards.
Okay, fair. Anyway, Kid in the Office, 10 mountains, lot of prowess creatures, I don't know, some light up the stages and skewer the critics and whatnot.
It's a nice looking burn deck. I mean, I'll just ask you, is burn good right now? These cards look good.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So there was like the Obosh phenomenon for a little bit. And the thing I didn't like about that was that you lost Eidolon. this one is not playing Obosh and is playing Viashino Pyromancer instead of Eidolon so that they can play with Wizard's Lightning, which I
Yeah.
think is fine. Eidolon is definitely way worse the more like creature-based decks get into the format, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So I get it. I think that this is a good take on this archetype, but
It looks powerful.
I don't know, just a bunch of 1-drops and a bunch of lightning bolts. Like, is that good? I mean, you can beat up some people. You can 5-0 league, absolutely. But
Yeah.
I don't know that this is the best thing to be taken to a big tournament just because of how narrow it is and, you know, the card Shieldred exists. So
Yeah, it kind of falls into like the discussion we had last week about trying to revolutionize Standard by expanding the card pool. Like, this is an expanded card pool, and trying to create like linear aggro decks out of the expanded card pool is nice, and it's a good idea, and you understand like theoretically why it works, because these cards are all very, very good. But still, if just all of your opponent's cards are worth 2 cards and gain X life when they come into play, then it just kind of gets washed out anyway. It needs to catch up somehow.
well, okay, so you expand the card pool, right? But ultimately, you're left with a bunch of cards that you have to jump through hoops in order to make it be R deal 3 damage.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not expanding what this deck is necessarily capable of. And I think that this is hopefully a corner case scenario, right? Where it's like, we only make 3 damage burn spells that are main deck playable, right? And in standard, maybe that will not be the case. But yeah, this deck, I agree. It's like, oh yeah, you have 16 different 1-drops that are effectively like 2 power 1-drops. Like, wow.
Yeah, I think where you like cross the threshold to a real deck is when those 1-drops start functioning as 3 power 1-drops, and there has to be a level of redundancy in these cards to get to that point. And these mostly do. I mean, like, I think you're going to get a lot of Swift Spears and Soul Scar Mages that are of a respectable size, and you're going to have some games where you just run over your opponent, and that's appealing. I don't think there's enough of them though. You just need Lightning Bolt, and the fact that Lightning Bolt isn't a Pioneer legal card is kind of weird to me. Like, it just
Well,
seems so innocuous.
for a minute, it would have been scary for the red decks to have Lightning Bolt, and also it might actually just be scary for the blue red decks to have Lightning Bolt. Honestly.
Maybe that is probably the bigger swing, but
what this deck needs is it like you have all the good 1-drops. Like, there are even more good 1-drops that you could be playing that you aren't playing. You know, that's not what it is suffering from. It is definitely suffering from lack of Pioneer playable thing that gives you a little bit of longevity and lets you beat strategies that are employing like 4-mana cards. And
I don't know if that. I think if you were just able to upgrade Soulscar Mage and Monastery Swift Spear with Lightning Bolt, that would go a very long way to making this type of mono red viable. I agree with you that, like, if there is going to be a actual best in the format mono red deck, it needs to look like what you're describing. I'm saying the viability of this approach hinges on the idea that they just need that one spell, that one more 3-mana damage spell, and then I think these 2 cards are enough to be carried into like a successful archetype.
I mean, maybe that leads you down the path of building like a different, like more all-in burn sort of deck. Whereas like this one still plays the board a decent amount. But like,
Yeah,
what this type of deck needs is a way to deal like 4 damage or 5 damage to a creature that is main deck playable. That's it.
yeah, maybe.
Because right now it's like just old growth troll is just like, ah, crap, I'm in a lot of danger. You know.
GG.
All right. Talk to BK. Blue-white version of Spirits. For Invasion of Gobakon, a card that I traditionally kind of like, but 4 is a lot. And also, I'm not sure that it's at the best in this archetype. It's kind of strange to see it here.
Yeah, I could see this just being like a trial run, right? I understand the appeal of wanting to see like how this card fits into this archetype, and it is certainly the type of thing that I would join a league with and just like, all right, let's feel this out a little bit. Because I do think you need to feel it out to understand how it interacts with some of the stuff here. And you see something like the 1 Errant and Gaida in the deck that tells me like, okay, yeah, maybe we're trying some stuff out, seeing what works. So I don't mind it. I don't mind it being present here. I understand your concerns, how it may not translate all that well.
So this is gonna sound like I'm making fun of you, and I'm not.
Okay,
Okay. This
I'll
is
allow it.
this is me earnestly asking. So you read this, you look at this errant card, right?
Yeah.
And your brain goes to read it. How does your brain work where you pronounce it the way that you did the last part of it?
I don't even know did I say Gaiada?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's honestly just instinct.
I don't because
That's
my
it.
my
That's all I got for you.
my brain is instinctively like Giada, which I think would be more of like an Italian pronunciation or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just weird, you know?
So if I say Giada, then maybe it's like the last time I experienced GI as a word was Gi. We have a card called Silken Gi in our latest limited format in Flesh and Blood. So I probably read it Gi and then Ada is my guess.
But you read it with like a J, like a Giada.
Giada or Giada? Now I don't even know which one I said. I don't know, man. I'm out here functioning on instinct. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
get through each day.
No, it's just wild to me. That's all.
Yeah.
I think that like the Italian pronunciation is correct, but like I'm always gonna think that I'm right because, you know.
Because that's good content creation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've talked about it before. A lot of it, like the weird pronunciation that I do, is hinging on my hyper literacy as a child, where like I just like lived through books. I knew how to read when I was like 3 and just did nothing but read to myself quietly and didn't speak to other humans for a very long time. So in the era where I was building language, I was building it internally and not externally.
Yeah.
And so I built a lot of weird pronunciations and that still stick with me to this day.
Dude, there were so many words that I knew, but I had no idea how to pronounce.
Oh yeah.
And
there's
then
one I said all the time on I used to say Segu all the time just
sure.
from reading the word segue over and over. Yeah.
And it's like you've heard the word segue, and then
I never put them together though. I never understood it was
exactly.
the same word.
Yeah, that's a good example. I like that one. I guess speaking to the invasion, this is not a curiosity deck. This is definitely more of a tribal, you know, like sort of wider battlefield.
Yeah, build up
build.
some sizable
So
threats.
I guess that makes sense, but I don't know. I like the power spike from the curiosity stuff, even if it's not necessarily super reliable. But yeah, maybe invasion plays pretty well with like the wedding announcements out of the sideboard too, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe there's something here. I don't know.
There's a lot of blue 1 mana protection spells these days.
A lot. They're pretty good too.
Yeah.
All right, Coleman P. Is it creativity? 2 World Spine Worms, 2 Mirrors in the mana base. I like the Mirrorses. 2 Worms instead of the Xenagos because this deck has 4 copies of Bitter Reunion to give the haste.
Mm-hmm.
So either you double worm, or you just like single worm 15 them, hope that maybe like Murex Fable, Shark Typhoon is nickel and dimed them.
Yeah, maybe. Or self-damage or something like that. Yeah. I think it's fine. Like, it's at least debatable. I don't think Atraxa is a slam dunk over Worldspine Worm, and I don't think Worldspine Worm is a slam dunk over Atraxa. So I'm happy to see either approach.
Yeah, I think this is cool. If nothing else, it's just like, oh yeah, like there's just a lot of work to do within this archetype.
Yeah,
like a lot of different ways that we can actually try and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And in general, I think just trying to kill them straight up is probably pretty good. But it's hard for me to turn down Atraxa, you know?
I understand.
All right. So how do you pronounce this screen name? Because I don't even know.
Yujo.
Okay. No, that sounds reasonable, and my brain did not come to that. So this one is 8 basic swamps and a lot of fancy non-basic lands, almost to the point where it looks like the Urborg Coffers deck in Modern. But this is Mono Black Waste Knot. Have you seen this deck?
I've heard rumblings. This is the first time I've looked at the full deck list.
Okay, this deck...
I've certainly built many Waste Knot decks, so like I know what we're going for here.
I have too. unfortunately.
All bad.
All bad. This one doesn't look that terrible. It's got a lot of weird stuff in it, and I think this is another one of those decks that can probably be iterated upon, but when you start popping off with Waste Not, it looks pretty good,
Yep.
and
You have very powerful turns.
very powerful turns, and it has the added benefit of like you're just incentivized to play a bunch of hand disruption in a format where some of the scariest decks are like, trying to assemble, a bunch of permanents like Karn and Cavalier of Thorns, like all these expensive cards, right? Or the Lotus Field decks, or uh maybe this is a little bit more of a throwback, but like, is it Phoenix trying to do like graveyard stuff and you just have like main deck go blanks, right? Like,
Yeah. Yep.
this is actually not the worst. I think that there are a lot of standard formats where you play like a bunch of Mind Rots in your deck and it's just really bad because Mind Rot is really bad, but it's actually not that bad of a card in Pioneer.
This deck also just keeps things very simple. Like it's just clear. I know what my best creature is. It's Shieldred. I want to play that as often as possible. And then there's just like very few cute cards to try and benefit from the Waste Not. Just a few one-offs, nothing too dramatic. I don't know. This looks okay. Like it could trick me into playing a league with it for sure.
Yeah, I don't think this is terrible. I certainly don't like how it is fairly reliant on the Waste Not at least to pop off, but once you do have it, you generally do pop off to the point where it seems like it is worth it.
It also seems like your games without it are just fine. They're just like fine basic games with good spells.
You're
and
a
good
crappy
creatures.
mono black mid range deck, which is basically an archetype we see 5-0 occasionally anyway.
Yep, that's exactly right.
So what's the downside, 8 swamps, 2 Urborgs with again 4 Castle Lochthwain. Like maybe people are just more okay with that ET being tapped half the time than I am, but
it's probably better in this deck than the last one we saw. Like you can get away with it a little bit more here.
Probably, and it's an effect that is desperately needed in this sort of deck too. But it's just like, well, if you're playing Forecastle, you're committed to Forecastle. Do you really need like the Crawling Barrens? Like, couldn't that just be a swamp? I don't know.
It's a good question.
Anyway,
you want that mana sink though, right? You got to have something to dump all that Waste Not mana into.
Yeah, Castle Lochthwain. I don't know. Whatever.
No, we need more than that.
We're not mana burning, man. It's fine if you pop off and you just have like 8 black pooling. It's not like, oh, Crawling Barrens. Thankfully, you have been my mana sink, and now you are here to save the day. It's just like, come on.
Sounds perfect.
Whatever. NSW 1074. Pretty normal looking Abzan Greasefang.
Yeah, not a lot new going on here. Text still seems fine to me.
I think this version is fine. I think there are better versions, and I think one of them we'll get to.
Okay.
Koji 1130 Elves, 4 Forest, because there's a lot of green and black stuff for, I don't know, Tyvar, Shaman of the Pack.
I'm just gathering my thoughts. I'm gathering my elf-based thoughts right now, trying to understand. This looks like the type of deck that would win an SCG Open out of nowhere. That's what I have to say about it. Just every now and then a deck like this would show up and you're like, what's happening? How is this the story we're telling this week? And then it would never show up again. And that is what this deck is capable of. It has some pretty significant power spikes, pretty good lords. Tyvar is a hell of a card.
Yes.
That's it. Good enough for a 5-0.
This deck,
good enough to win an SCG Open.
This deck is more linear than Goblins, oddly enough. And I think for the most part that just makes it so it's better positioned in general in the format. Also,
its ceiling feels higher to me too.
Yeah, ceiling is higher. Goldfish is probably higher, like average Goldfish. Arguably stronger sideboard options too.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think I would ever play this deck because so the old elf decks the kind of like combo ones, maybe like the glimpse
Hmm.
ones or whatever. Those are pretty fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I like Legacy Elves a lot.
yeah, Legacy Elves is just like a good way to explain it. But this one that is basically like singularly focused on Shaman of the Pack versus like I really liked the old extended version where, your glimpse was busted to start, then people adapted. Then it was like occasionally, like maybe 1 in 10 games, you like glimpse combo kill someone, but the rest of them
Hmm.
are just like grinding people out with Wirewood Hive Master sort of
Yeah.
things. Like you're
Yeah.
playing like a bunch of different games on average. And this deck is just like, nah, I just do the same thing.
Nah, one game.
Yeah.
So you were not a fan of the Distant Melody Elf Ball decks, I take it.
No, never.
Yeah. Yeah, those were bad.
I also I lost to that deck in a pro tour, playing fairies, which
Oof.
seems like it should have been a reasonable matchup, but
Yeah.
I was bad and my deck was bad, and my opponent was Alan Comer, who is a Hall of Fame member, had
Yep.
just left Wizards, and showed up to the pro tour trying to buy. He went up to the vendors and said, "I would like 4 copies of Nettle Sentinel." They were like, "Sir, I've never heard of that card before," because it was a card that had not yet been released.
Nice.
He was trying,
Perfect.
so he was like cashing in his Hall of Fame invite, not really knowing like what was going on in Magic, and just like remembered this deck that he had played in FFL. So yeah, he was just like, I guess I just won't play with him. That's fine. Same deck, right?
That sounds very reasonable to me, knowing Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just beat the crap out of me like round 1, round 2. Great, good times. Avery Alder, more elves. This one has some white.
Yeah, it's got white and black and weird cards and no
Selfless Spirit.
Tyvar. And I don't like it. Don't like this one. I didn't like the last one. I really don't like this one.
Yeah, splashing for a Selfless Spirit, I'm not super down with. And yeah, I think, Tyvar is one of the reasons to do the thing,
Yes.
Although, I don't know, this one is utilizing like Stain the Mind and
Stain the Mind.
Pile-On.
I just saw that. Yeah, Stain the Mind.
Stain the Mind and Pile-On. I like that a lot. Like these awesome, like, sort of effects that you would want in your sideboard anyway. Pile-On is the Convoke, Hero's Downfall. Stain the Mind is a Convoke, Cranial Extraction. Well,
but we can do this in the other deck with Tyvar as well if we was like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Mush these two together and then you got something.
Cool. All right. Rushi 00, different sort of Grease Fang. This one, very few creatures, only Rafine's Informant and the Grease Fangs. Vessel of Nascency, I like it. 2 main deck copies of Silence. I get it. If you're expecting, a lot of blue-white control or just opponents like sitting on a bunch of removal spells or whatever, like Silence is a pretty good answer. This is very Sleep-esque, where I think if this is the way that you're solving the problem, it's probably not a great way to do it.
A lot of sleeps in the format right now.
A lot of sleep. Just people being very clever, perhaps too clever for their own good, I don't think Silence is like the least egregious example of that. Because Silence is a card that these decks have like played to some success already. So I'm not going to poo-poo it too much, but if you're main decking 2 Silences, I think that's where you are. 2 copies of Cling to Dust, which is interesting. And then this one has like 2 traverses for extra Grease Fangs, which I think works well with the Vessel. So I do like some amount of traverses.
Yeah, I get the Vessel Traverse package. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the Clings are
Doom
weird.
Whisperers.
Oh, Doom Whisperer. Okay, now I don't like that. Why is that? How is that the thing that you do?
It's big. It's got keyword big.
It is keyword big, but it's also keyword expensive as hell.
Yeah, that is true.
Where do you want this? Rakdos?
Sold to a vendor when it was expensive.
Smart.
Obviously, I didn't do that, but
naturally. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it is Rakdos, but I think Shieldred is the card you want in your sideboard. And I'm surprised that people haven't been just like jamming that.
Sure.
Because, dude, for a long time, I was like, you need some sort of like sideboard juke,
Some pivot, yeah.
right? And you're okay at dealing some chip shots here and there. You know, Rafine's Informant has a decent amount of power. You get those games where you're just like hard casting Chariot or whatever. You just need something a little more solid. And it was like, is like Tastiger the thing? And like, that's fine, but you can't play a ton of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just Shieldred, you know? And if you're playing the versions that are playing like Liliana or whatever, doing a little bit more grindy stuff, then Shieldred plays right into that. I guess this one has Bank Busters, but yeah, I like that. I like it better than Doom Whisperer. I don't know.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with you. I think I wrote an article on Doom Whisperer, like when we used to do for SCG, we'd like call dibs on the cards that were previewed on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, that was the worst.
I remember writing about Doom Whisperer. Yeah, if you slept in, you'd be like, oh, I have to write about fucking, I don't know, generic. I have to write about Duress this week because I didn't bother to wake up and get a new card.
Yeah, and it's just like some of the stuff too was like, I know that I would write like a god tier article about this card, and then you read the one that someone wrote, and it's just like, God, you don't even have like the 3 best decks in your article, but it's like you can't mention it because like them's the rules.
Right.
It's like, yo, can I add just like 3 bomb ass deck lists to the end of this article about a completely different card? And they're like, no.
That should have been a column was at the end of the week you went through and corrected everyone's deck list. I'm sure that would have went over very well with everyone else.
In my younger days, Brian. In my younger days. I mean, in my younger days, I think these podcasts would be a lot meaner too.
Oh yeah,
you know,
for sure.
But now I'm like, oh, okay, I see what this player was going for. You know,
right. And I'm just a generally nice person these days. I don't say anything bad to people ever. I don't pop off. I'm just
definitely, cool, definitely never pop off on people.
Nope, never curse anyone out. Just polite all the time.
Yeah, at least I mean to the people that don't deserve it.
I said people, Jerry.
Oh, word. Okay.
Nice to people.
All right. Next up, 80 cards. It's a lot of cards. Enough cards to fit in 1 copy of the Celestis in our Urian, Niv Mizzet, Omnath, Nahiri, Bring to Light deck.
Pick a lane. Stick to it. No, I don't know. This might be fine. I don't know why it would be fine. I don't have any reason why I would want to do this combination of things. Like, I don't believe Urian is that good here. The reason to want to do this would be Urian. It just doesn't seem like it matters all that much. So,
yeah, it's not blinking a lot of stuff. I will say that. This strikes me as I didn't know what to cut to my deck list, so I added a companion.
Well, it's one of the better uses of companion, I would say.
Well, okay, now there are some upsides here, right? There is, for example, an unmoored ego to bring to light for that you do not want to naturally draw in most instances.
Okay.
So that is a reason. But I don't know. I feel like, for example, things like Sylvan Caryatid, probably pretty important.
Yeah. Feels like your deck is significantly worse when you don't make that play.
To the point where you're playing a Celestis as a 5th Caryatid to kind of like even out the ratio or whatever.
But not the 4th growth spiral though.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Whatever. Ooh, I guess 1 copy of Niv Mizzet Supreme. Aftermath card,
okay.
Baby.
Yeah, that's a new card.
Technically new. All right. God's Other Son 1. More Rakdos Sacrifice. Ooh, this one has 2 Priests of Forgotten Gods.
Yeah, also, I forgot all about Unlucky Witness. This card is so much better than the Bloodmaking card. I don't know what I was thinking. I want this card.
I agree with you. I think that when your curve is higher and there aren't a ton of good sack outlets, then it makes sense to maybe want to try like Epicure instead. Or if you want to like scale up your harvesters to kill like those 4 and 5 toughness things, Epicure makes more sense.
Nah, I don't want to do any of that. I want to play these cards. I like this deck much better.
Yeah, in general, Unlucky Witness, incredible card.
Yep.
This list looks really good, actually.
I agree.
Yeah, Devils, Familiars, 3 Witness, 4 Harvester, 2 Priest, 2 Ob, 4 Fable, 3 Push, 4 Claim, 4 Dispute, 4 Witch's Oven, 22 Land. Not messing around with Ob Planeswalker, at least in the main deck. Still has Gigantha. Nothing in the sideboard that turns off Gigantha, including
The
Furnace Reigns,
Furnace
the new
Reigns.
Threaten we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah,
That
this looks
takes
good.
a
This looks
treasure.
really good. Yep.
If I were sitting down to build this deck, it would look pretty similar to this, I think. So
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. Nice deck list.
yeah, no random ass castle with no basic lands. This is just good.
There's always room for a castle. So maybe there's one flaw, but other than that, perfect.
Actually, you know what? I was normally cutting the Takanuma from these decks. I don't think you want to anymore with Ob.
Okay. You think the discount is worth enough?
Well, you also just have a more high priority thing to want to get back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So before it was like, oh, I'll play like the Urborg instead, or maybe just even another basic to hedge against like Field of Ruin or whatever. But I like Takanuma again.
Okay.
Cool. This list rules. I love this.
Yeah, I would play this deck pretty happily.
Colomino. Jeskai. Sort of. Ascendancy. Treasure Cruises. Doing some Rona things. 4 Mox Ambers. Got Emery, Skrelv, and Rona to enable the Amber. For when you're popping off, you have Third Path Iconoclast. Yeah, I don't know. Otherwise, like Retraction Helix combo-y thing, 1 copy of Bitter Reunion to haste all your Iconoclast friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think this deck is not supposed to be an all-in combo deck. I just keep coming back to like these setups. Anything with Rona, the fairer it is, the more I like it, because I just think there's better ways to do combo in Pioneer rather than having all these points of weakness you're introducing to your deck. Like your deck is interactable on the stack. You can interact with these creatures. You can interact with things like Jeskai Ascendancy. There's just way too many points of weakness when you build like this. I just want a fair deck that backdoors into this combo. That's all I'm looking for.
Okay. I agree with you. And I also think that this is the best version of doing that I've seen.
Okay. That frightens me. Like, it feels like there should be something, like there's no interaction in this deck whatsoever. I guess there's portable.
Yeah, there's some holes. And there's also just random blockers and whatnot too.
Can't I just play like some good cards? Some nice removal spells.
I mean, so part of the problem with that is that
little Thoughtseize.
there isn't, right? Like, yeah, there are those cards in black for the most part, but in Jeskai, not really. See,
yeah, I think I just don't want to be Jeskai.
So Tyvar to me is basically like another one of those like kind of silly do nothing but only help you combo cards.
Does it have to be? Like it can be more versatile than that, I think.
Yeah, I just haven't seen lists with other cards that are not terrible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not out here building a version that I like, so who am I to criticize?
It's like Tyvar that can get back like Rona and nothing else, you know? And
yeah, that would not be my approach.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think you just look at it, you're like, okay, this is a pretty bad approach, right? But I think people have done maybe most of the work that they need to do. Now people are like, oh, Ledger Shredder like fixes all the problems or whatever. And I think the Shredder helps for sure. You know, it does help you sift through like your bad cards. It's another thing to return with Tyvar. It attacks, it blocks, etc. But yeah, whatever.
Does do those things.
I think that playing random creatures like Iconoclast, Philology, Archaeologist, like you have some decent card advantage with like Research Desk, and like Ascendancy is not that bad on its own, helping you filter through things. Like you have a lot of ways to get rid of bad Retraction Helixes. I think that this is not that bad.
I guess I just don't have a lot of faith left in Jeskai Ascendancy. I've been burned too many times.
That is fair. That to me is kind of like the weakest point of the deck is like the actual ascendancies. Like you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to be that. Maybe it shouldn't even be that you have 4 of them.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe it's just like a random Jeskai ascendancy, and that offers an interesting angle in some scenarios.
Okay, check this out, dude. You're like, oh yeah, like can we play a good removal spell? The sideboard has Rending Volley, great removal spell
Oh, that
for
is good.
the matchups where it works. The removal spell in the sideboard is Justice Strike. That's the best option.
Yeah, that's not what I was looking for.
Yeah, isn't that heinous?
That's really bad.
There's no, I mean, like you could go deeper and play like Binding, but I don't think you should do that. And there's no Prismatic Ending, Lightning Bolt, Unholy Heat, or what. Like Modern has just spoiled you. That's all.
Maybe that's true. What about ossification? If it's good enough elsewhere, can it be just good enough here?
Basic land.
Oh, we got 0 basics. Okay. Yeah, that's a problem.
Chain to the Rocks.
Do we have enough mountains?
Well, that's a problem that's fixable.
Yeah, maybe Chain to the Rocks is the answer. There's only 4 mountains now, but you're right.
I guess
build around that.
This deck wants whole for Emery.
Yep.
So I don't know. You could fit a couple Chain to the Rocks in there for sure if you wanted to.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm just expecting removal to actually be good, where it's just like it's not a real thing.
No, dude, it is one of the worst things about the format, or best thing, depending on how you look at it, I guess.
Yeah, depending on your point of view.
Like, people are playing Power Word Kill, and there are still things it doesn't kill in the format. You know?
That is flavor fail, to be sure.
No Terminate, no Dreadbore, nothing.
Power Word, maybe kill.
Or, like, we have Dreadbore, but, like, not instant, I guess. Power Word Kill most things.
Some things.
All right. Mystic Craft 23, Green White Angels, Kayla's Reconstruction, sort of new-ish.
Sigarda?
What was yeah, this one. Sigarda, Font of Blessings. We have 1.
That's not enough to make me play this deck.
No.
I do think this deck is okay, but
yeah, deck is okay. As far as elf into 3-drop decks, I guess I like this more than red green, at least the way things are situated now. I
don't know. The way you were going to sell me on this deck was not by adding more collected companies, I'll tell you that much.
No, yeah, that's fair. I mean, Reconstruction is an X-Spell, you see.
So they say.
And 7 cards instead of 6. So
true. Can never miss. That would confuse me. That's another thing in paper that I would mess up for sure.
Yeah, the 6s and 7s and all the cards are like close, but they all do like 1 notch different or whatever.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's really bad.
Yeah, what are you gonna do? All right. Next deck is from Brittany, another Rakdos deck. This one is just pure beatdowns though. Got
aggro.
Yes.
Aggro sacrifice.
Dreadhorde Butcher, Serrated Scorpion, Voldaren, Thrill Seeker.
Just throwing creatures all over the place.
Yeah, this is the backup 2 that gives the thing the ability to sacrifice, deal damage equal to its power.
So just throw your Dreadhorde Butcher at someone.
Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't want to play this. I want to play the other versions of this deck. But when like sacrifice was a very big thing in standard, there were moments to be aggressive, moments to be like grindier.
Yes.
I don't think that translates quite the same way to Pioneer. I think you just always need to like do the more powerful thing, and you're not going to steal too many games by using this plan, but certainly worth trying and 5-0ing a league with. So
yeah, I respect his approach, especially because I think for the most part, people are doing too much nonsense with their sacrifice decks when they would benefit from just doing something as simple as like including
just
more 1-drops.
Yeah, just killing them.
Yeah,
that works.
Just lower your curve a little bit, play less dirtily cards, and you'll probably be better off. And this is one of the decks where I'm just like, whoa, no, not that far, but like I definitely respect this a lot.
Yep. I'm with you.
The Tinker with some Neoform, Soul Flare, Atraxa E-Business. This one is like all in on Soul Flare though. Striped Riverwinder.
That's like all it does.
Samit, Zatalpa, I was like, oh, what is Evangel of Synthesis? I keep seeing this card, and I just never remember what it is. But it's blue, black, 2/3, ETB loot. Oh yeah, the Urborg
Yeah.
Scavengers. We were talking about this.
Yeah, so you get basically more Soul Flayer lights.
Yeah. Yeah.
Seems fine.
And if you have one of the 2-drop looters, you have Oracle of Tragedy too, you can just neoform into this thing.
Okay.
This doesn't seem bad to me, actually.
I think you're supposed to have more hexproof in this deck.
Probably.
That's the thing that really stands out to me.
Yeah, probably. That hexproof is definitely the one where it's like, oh, I definitely can't do anything about this,
Yes.
right? And there's
I have to have this to make my deck work.
and there's
it's just
there's the 2-drop backup hexproofer that could be another like 2-drop to neoform or whatever. So
yeah. That's exactly what I would look at. I think that would be interesting.
yeah, I do like this though, because you get to play Thoughtseize main deck, Collective Brutality as a discard outlet, which is fine, and a way of interaction. And then you have just Sultai sideboard cards, which is just as much disruption and spot removal as you could possibly want, right?
Yeah, seems okay.
Dude, sideboard
I think
sideboard 1 Banehound.
Okay. Yeah. We need that lifelink and haste, I guess.
I think that's a good card to sideboard against beatdown decks.
Sure.
And it's just funny to me because never in my life could I have conceived a situation in which I would
Where you want
sideboard
the
exactly
one-of
one copy of Banehound.
Sideboard Banehound, yeah.
It just rules. That's box checking right there.
Oh, that's cool.
See, I like this deck. This is cool. TX EPI. Okay. Brian, this is you. Go.
Yeah, this is good. This is good. So we are looking at is it cards, and then the top end are just all of my favorite cards in the entire world. It's Hullbreaker Horror, 4 Alrund's Epiphany, so already sold, and then it's the exact suspect you would expect: divide by 0, counter spells, removal spells, all that stuff. But the glue holding it all together, kind of, I don't know if that's the right way to put it, because this is just like also a huge threat in so many scenarios.
Yeah, glue, engine, card advantage.
Yeah, kind of everything. It's just Chandra, Hope's Beacon. And if it is a counter Magic Light format, I like seeing this card in play at the Pro Tour. It so overperformed from what I expected it to be doing. I think this card is extremely strong. I'm not shocked at all to see it Pioneer worthy. It's just kind of like maybe the best top end you could possibly lead into in these decks. It unlocks everything you could possibly want to do, and your deck goes into overdrive. You chain your Alrund's Epiphany so much more efficiently. This honestly seems very strong to me. Like I think this is probably a real deck.
It's like the Elspeth Sun champion of this format.
Yeah.
It's like
that's a good way of putting it.
6 mana Haymaker, does a bunch of stuff. You love to see it. You love to build around it. Like this looks good to me. I like the blue-red decks incorporating divide by 0 just because it's a pretty good generic answer to a lot of stuff.
For sure.
And not a lot of good answers to 5 toughness things, right? 4 and 5 toughness things. And
we're keeping that lesson sideboard package very tight, which is good.
Yes.
You don't need to get silly with it.
Yeah, no Brian Gottlieb 6 lesson sideboards.
No, not in Pioneer.
Not in Pioneer. All right. Good. Yeah, and you still get to play Fable too.
Not bad.
This looks solid.
Using Fable to ramp into Chandra is pretty good. So
yeah. I don't think that this is perfect for Pioneer. You still have like some Thoughtseize issues,
Yeah, I think Thoughtseize counter magic, which is like a significant portion of Pioneer, to be sure.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think at least the counter magic matchups are going to be fun and interesting.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
And you have a lot of good sideboard options there.
Yeah, you get your Shark Typhoons, you get your Hullbreaker Horrors. You certainly have game against them.
Yeah, so for Magic Online, at least, queuing this into a bunch of blue-white control doesn't seem, like you're setting yourself up for failure or whatever. But in real life, you are almost certainly going to draw.
My favorite.
Yeah, not great. All right. The Fury 1, 987, more mono red action. This one, 2 copies of Chandra Dress to Kill, 2 Phoenix Chicks, no really like leading into the wizard theme. Well, I guess there's still 4 wizards lightnings.
Still have the
Oh,
lightnings,
there's
which
lightning
seems,
strike instead of skewer. That's what it is.
yeah,
I assumed we got away from wizards lightning to play lightning strike.
no, we're still doing that. We're just hoping for things to work out. Spoiler, I don't think they're going to work out. They worked out for a 5-0. I mean, that's good enough.
Yeah, 8's not a lot, right? It's only 8 wizards. Soul Scar
Yeah.
and Lava Runner.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not great. Like Skewer is certainly not perfect, but when you get Chandra into the mix, it gets a lot more palatable for me. And like even Phoenix Chick too. But ideally you want your burn spell to be able to like clear the way for a thing, not have to like attack with a Phoenix Chick and then burn out a problematic 3 toughness thing. So
Yep.
it's never
that's
ideal,
tough.
but just so close to having a good red deck. So close. But yeah, worth noting also that this one is not playing Eidolon.
Yeah, seems to have completely fallen out of fashion at this point.
Yeah, not even showing up in the sideboards. I mean, I guess part of the problem too is like the combo deck. Like again, the next deck is another Lotus Field deck. It's just like they could just combo off with 5 mana cards and beat you. So anyway, this Lotus Field deck, Brian, has 2 Chandra Hope's Beacons.
Okay. I need a moment to process that.
Yeah, do we need this? Do we need to be doing this?
Feels like no. But I don't think it's bad. Like I don't want 2. 2 seems like a lot for sure. You could talk me into 1 though, being smart. And a way to like sort of hedge a little bit. You get to have a card which can single-handedly win the game, answer problematic things, support your main way of winning the game. It just seems so matchup dependent to me though. Like, and having 2 in the main deck, whatever. You're trying things out. You're in a league. I think that's totally fine. You want to draw it more often. So I'm not going to really bash the decision, but my expectation is you probably do not want 2 in the long term.
Okay, what about the Wish Battle? Because there's a copy of that too.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
While you think, I'm going to talk about how Ren has just jumped on my lap and is aggressively bunting me because it is currently 4:30 p.m.
And getting close to food time.
Yeah, he is reminding me that dinner is in an hour and a half, and how dare I even think about forgetting?
Better not fucking forget.
I've only fed you at 6 p.m. for the past 1,000 days or whatever.
Just saying, keep it consistent.
Yeah.
I just think 5 is so much more than 4. And like
it is, right?
It will cost you games. I don't believe in this one. I think you're just supposed to play Mastermind's Acquisition. And this is like I just don't see the upside reliably presenting itself enough.
Word. Colonismo. 60 card, bring to light. No Niv Mizzet. This is the version I like. This is like the Canister and Company deck from a million Pro Tours ago, more or less. I think this deck is fine.
It does seem fine to me. Not a lot changing with it thus far, but yeah, good consistent game plans. Some weirdo outs with your bring to light package. I think that's going to be good enough a lot of the time.
Yeah. Robot BC, is it? This is creativity, but with Torrential Gear Hulk. I think that this deck got iterated on very quickly, and I like this version. This one only has 1 Sublime Epiphany. I think the first version had like 3 or something. It was just a lot. And the other big get was getting Divide by 0 in the mix. Just another way to like loot that card into the graveyard if you wanted to, but just a general catch-all.
Divide looting is one of my favorite things. Like, I think it's actually an underappreciated part of this card. A card that was eventually banned in Standard because it was so dominant. It had to go. Yeah, it's nice to see this card get picked up in Pioneer, and I'm not really surprised about it either. It just seems good to me.
I'm not happy about it. It doesn't make me happy. It's just like, 3 mana. 3 mana is so much, you know?
It is,
but
but it's so versatile. Like
it
it
is.
just does
And
everything.
you need it for the versatility. It's just like I can't wait until we have like a 2-mana version of this or like a very good 3-mana version, you know.
I don't know if you're going to get much better than this. We'll see.
Anyway, as far as creativity decks are concerned, I do like this one because I think it's a little bit more explosive. So your power spike has a tendency to happen a little bit earlier, and a lot of your stuff
Hmm.
is able to be played as like a backup plan. Like you can just
Yep.
cast Gearhulks and Magma Opuses and
Oh
whatnot.
yeah. Opus Gear Hulk is badass. Like that's a real game plan still, and I think like we kind of forgot about it for a period of time, but
Yeah.
shouldn't have. It's good enough for sure.
The thing I don't like about it is that you can go off and still lose to things because you're not doing anything like absurdly powerful against, like Lotus Field, for example.
Yeah, you have to play a little bit more fair against them, but I think it's just like closing speed. You get so much closing speed from this card where you're just like, do your thing on one turn and then the game is over.
Against most opponents. But like,
and you get to do it at instant speed too. Like, I guess not with creativity.
Yeah,
That's the problem there.
But like if you're playing this interactive fair game and then you against Lotus and then you finally have a window where you put in like 2 World Spine Worms and give them haste, like
you do just win.
that is closing speed, right?
Yeah.
But you get that window against Lotus Field and you're like, resolve my 5/6 and like burn you a little bit and like tap your non-Lotus lands, like
yeah, you have to play across 2 turns. I would bet you probably like board out creativities against Lotus Field. That's the first thing that stands out to me. Like if you have enough to get rid of all your removal plus the creativities,
you're certainly trying to shave on that stuff for sure, because the game is going to go long enough where you don't want to just end up drawing multiple copies of that stuff for sure. But I still think that
too much removal to get it all gone though. There's 7 hard removal spells, plus 4 creativities, and you have your lesson package. So can you just jam everything? Maybe.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's still like rending volleys in the sideboard too, so it's not like you get to board in like 12 cards.
Yep. So you probably have to just trim creativities instead.
Yep. Which, whatever, that's fine. Not ideal, but pick and choose your spots for this creativity list. Doctor of Time, mono white, 4 Brave the Elements, no ossifications, but definitely utilizing some Coppercoat Vanguards. This list only has 2, but still good. It's still there.
Yeah, fine. No notes.
Okay. Demon Deacon. Okay. All right. So this is a Rona deck, but it has Tyvar, and it is also splicing that in with Kinnan, Karn, and that weirdo combo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This one also has 4 Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which I guess, I don't know, is another thing for Amber and Tyvar and
greasing the wheels a little bit.
Yeah, like lets you loot away a Retraction Helix, but like other than eventually like rebuying Retraction Helix, it doesn't give you a whole lot of value because the only other instant is Addictive Time. So it's maybe not ideal here. But then there's also like Nashi Moon's Legacy.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Rebuying those legendary pieces should you need them. Doesn't seem bad. I like that card has always stood out to me as potentially powerful. There are a lot of legends here. You're basing your combo off 2 potential legends, so pulling them back is potentially game ending in some spots.
So kind of bemoaned the lack of like great removal and in Pioneer, and there is good removal for like killing elves and like killing 2 toughness things. And part of the problem with this deck is that just like your early stuff dies a lot. It's really difficult to get any sort of traction. And Nashi is a card that kind of helps you claw back from that. Like Nashi has 4 toughness and ward 1 and lets you just, bring back your Kinnans and hopefully just like outlast their removal or whatever. So I get why it's there. There's also like, Mox Amber synergies and whatnot, but I get it. I understand.
Seems fine to me.
Yeah. How do you feel in general about merging the Karn Kinnan stuff with the Rona stuff.
It is kind of in the same vein as merging like Jeskai Ascendancy with Rona stuff. I do think there is at least some overlap in the form of Tyvar, where you're just very good at keeping these key legends around. Like that's what your deck is now built around. It's like I always am able to protect these legends, to bring back these legends, to recycle these legends over and over. I don't know if that in and of itself does enough though. Like it's still just very focused on doing one of these two powerful things. And if you are against a deck that does these things consistent, like something like Lotus Field, and they find just one piece of interaction, like one bounce spell to buy them one more turn, that's going to be enough to beat you most of the time because you don't do anything to them whatsoever.
No, but in theory, your combo is a little bit faster if you just have it naturally rolled up.
Yeah, I don't know if I believe that. I mean, I know it like potentially can be. I understand that. I just think the reality of putting all the pieces together, you need a little bit more setup. You have a little bit less redundancy. You have a bunch of moving pieces now. I guess like maybe the biggest point in its favor I could point to is just like accelerating to 6 mana and doing something with Karn that messes up opposing decks that are trying to just go over the top of you. And that does seem pretty achievable in a lot of scenarios, or even just like getting to 4 mana and being able to like go get your Tormod script, or 5 mana and get to your Pithy Needle. Like that's real. That is going to disrupt some number of decks.
Yeah.
So maybe Karn is more interaction than I'm giving it credit for.
Yeah, but it is kind of the same thing where it's like, all right, you have merged two archetypes to the point where now you have more business cards, but you're still not interacting with people on the whole. And I think that, again, that's just kind of the nature of Pioneer, where you can play a bunch of like shocks or whatever, but if shocks are not the kind of interaction that you want, it's like, what is the best thing, especially when you start thinking about like, what do I want against like Rakdos and Beatdown and Mono Green and Lotus Field? Like there isn't a card that covers all of those bases.
No, there is not.
Right. So the solution for this is, I don't know, just try and be kind of fast, I guess.
Yeah, and I don't think you're fast enough. I just don't see it. Your ceiling may be fast enough. I don't think you're consistently fast enough.
I agree with that. But I mean, yeah, you just hope that it lines up well where maybe you have the nuts against them once, and then in one of the other games, like where their draw doesn't really come together, your more average draw can like beat them. But I don't know. It is a lot of praying going on for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right, Ove McNamara, mono black, 13 swamps with 3 Castle Lochthwain and a Durborg. So I like that distribution a lot more. 4 Waste Knots and not going super hard on it. 4 Thoughtseize, 2 Duress, 4 Liliana. And this one is just 4 Trespasser, 4 Shieldred, not messing around with like the underdog and whatnot.
Yeah. These are just like very disciplined approaches to Waste Not decks. Like these decks are just saying, I think Waste Not is a good enough card to just play fair and straight up.
Yeah.
And I'll combine it with my Gaia Reach Sanitarium and my Liliana, like completely reasonable cards, and use that to generate advantage.
Yeah. And I kind of like that. And I certainly, we talked about how, sometimes without Waste Not, your deck just looks like mono black mid-range. That's just what this is. This is just mono black mid-range with Waste Knots, Gaia Reaches, and a little bit of extra discard.
What's funny here is I think with Waste Knot, a lot of the time, this deck is still going to look like mono black mid-range. Like it doesn't do anything different.
Yeah.
There's no like immensely high power ceiling. It's just this weird little bonus piece of value. And that says a lot about like the internal quality of Waste Knot. Unfortunately, the thing it is trying to say is in contravention of everything we thus far know about Waste Knot. It is saying this card is good enough to be a value engine. And look, at some point there will just be enough pieces where like, okay, Graveyard Trespasser gets you this little incidental bit of value off the ward. You have things like Shouldred, which combines well with Gaia Reach Sanitarium as well. So all these pieces coming together is just like, okay, this card actually just crosses over enough where it is inherently powerful. That's just never been true up until this point. So
yeah, I think I would want to go a little bit harder on the Waste Not stuff, but not by much. And other than that, I like the look of this deck.
Yeah, seems fine.
Benny R. Blue-white control, 2 cents.
This is the same deck. You can't fool me. This is just the same deck we saw before.
Well, this is like a hybrid. This is no sharks, no Castle Vantress, 2 censor, 2 absorb. But yes, you're right. Same deck. Okay. Alistair 95. Rogues, but
Yeah, rogue time.
But make it weird. Soaring Thought Thief, Thieves Guild Enforcer. Those are pretty staple 4-ofs. The card that sort of revitalized people's interest in this archetype, Fairy Mastermind, is there as a 1-of.
Yeah.
Jace the Perfected Mind, I think, can mostly supplant into the story, but this deck is playing 2 of each. And then, just like some fun of 1-of Nighthawk Scavenger, Zerasan, 2 Borrower, 2 Shieldred, a Cling to Dust, a Throat, an Edict. I don't know.
I'm just having a hard time seeing the appeal of this deck. Like, if it was leaner and there were a bunch of powerful 1s and 2s that were just carrying you, and Jace the Perfected Mind just incidentally ramped them up to a ludicrous degree, that would all sound very good. But like, I don't think Soaring Thought Thief is good enough. I don't really think Thieves Guild Enforcer is good enough. And those are the only recipients of payoff in this entire deck for doing this kind of like rogue setup. And yeah, like the Zareth San asking to connect off of this very small amount of rogues, like, feels very cute to me.
It's 12 rogues. It's not that bad.
That feels pretty bad. I mean, like, just given how games play out in Pioneer, it's either you have to end the game very quickly or you're being ground into dust. You
can also just flash in the Zerasan for 5 mana. I'm not saying that's good, but it is a thing you can do.
Yeah. And I guess too, like, there are very powerful permanent cards in this format. Like, this card in Standard actually underperformed Deluxe. It didn't feel like it always had the best targets. But targets kind of go bonkers in this format, and even just like, getting Fabled a lot of the time is going to feel quite good with this card. So some good options here.
Yeah. So if I were to build this deck, I would not include Zerasan, but I see what they're going for. It doesn't seem that terrible to me. Leaning on the into the story Jace stuff does not seem good enough without, like, it was Ruin Crab that basically made those cards very playable, right? And I don't think we're going hard enough to make them super good. But in the context of small blue and black creatures with a bunch of disruption, it's like, okay, like that seems like a fine enough place in the format to be, to me.
Yeah, maybe. I think I liked other approaches to this we saw earlier more than I like this particular. I just don't believe in Soaring Thought Thief and Thieves Guild Enforcer. That's what I come back to. Like, I just don't think those cards are good enough.
I think Thought Thief is pretty medium, but I do like Thieves Guild Enforcer quite a bit. But obviously you need support on top of it to make it so it's actually a 3-2.
Yes.
But yeah, like, if you're looking for the cheap creatures to play in blue and black, you could do worse than the rogues, right? And I like Thieves Guild Enforcer and needing to play Soaring Thought Thief on top of it much better than playing Suspicious Stowaway.
Okay.
Because it also enables Drown in the Loch too, which the other deck did not have. Like, they had to play Make Disappear instead.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that is a strong card for sure.
If I were to build rogues, my deck would probably be 20 cards different or whatever, but I don't think that this is the worst thing you could be doing.
Okay.
All right. Scourge Altars, more goblins. This one, a little spicy. Got Fable the Mirror Breaker, which is fine. Incredible card. Put it anywhere. Probably can't get hurt all that much. This one has 4 Chain Whirlers, 4 Call of the Death Dwellers to return those Chain Whirlers, maybe ones that you have traded away or discarded to Fable, give it a Death Touch counter. Another thing pointing towards the format being more about playing to the board. Also, 3 copies of Touch of Moonglove, which is B instant, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains Death Touch until end of turn. And, some other stuff. But, like, very much trying to just, like, Death Touch a Chain Whirler in our Goblins deck.
Yeah. We've been down this road before, and if the format is about making battlefields and setting up a bunch of creatures, then these things are quite good. I don't think this format is about that, but maybe just like that with a decent clock tacked onto it and some weird card advantage sources in the form of Horde Master. Like, at least I see a reason to play this deck over the other Goblins deck, which was just like, here's my Goblins.
Yeah.
I sure hope they're good enough.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go this far. And generally, if the format is about playing to the board, then Chain Whirler on its own is going to end up being pretty good. Like, yeah, maybe you could also play Call of the Death Dweller or whatever, but Touch of Moonglove is just so bad.
It's not a strong card, that's for sure.
It is not. I mean, I guess you can kind of combo it with Fanatical
Well,
Firebrand.
how were we doing this before? Like, what was the thing in Standard? I'm blanking on it.
Stature Statue.
Right.
And then we got Call of the Death Dweller, like right after Chain Whirler rotated, I think.
That sounds correct.
But yeah, it was a thing you could do with Mayhem Devil, right? So
yes, for sure.
Anyway, getting some sleep vibes from Touch of Moonglove, just saying.
I understand.
All right, Skepa SG. This is maybe the new hotness from what I've seen looking at deck lists. This is Transmogrify Atraxa, but also Rakdos. And also, I don't know, got some random like Kaitos and Shark Typhoons in there. So
yeah,
Grixis, Transmogrify, but very Rakdos-y with like Bankbusters and Fables and whatnot.
Okay, so playing a few game plans here and probably doing it pretty well. I mean, this looks a lot like the Standard deck sidestepped into more consistent shells for Pioneer, which is cool. It seems like it's still powerful enough for Standard. Like, I'm not really doubting what's going on here, and the Atraxas here are quite a bit better than they were in some of the other decks we saw, and you're getting hits all over the place. So this deck should be just as consistent about putting together those turn 4 Atraxas. So yeah, this seems completely fine to me.
Yeah, I don't mind this at all. Also get to play the Gigantha if you care about that.
I don't. I'm more excited that I get to play Thoughtseize and Fatal Push. Like, that's just great.
Yeah,
I'm in my lane.
No, this is it. This is kind of what you're talking about, like Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, Transmogrify stuff. It's like, yeah, the Hive Mind has made it happen.
Yep, seems good.
Evan, for real.
No, I'm not talking about. You keep showing me this deck. I'm not talking about the blue-white deck. We've been over this.
I swear, they're all different people. They're definitely not the same person with different screen names.
10 accounts.
This one doesn't have laid out arms, so I can excuse having a lot of non-basic lands in your mana base, but same deck. Okay, Trash Boat 100. Boros, target my stuff to pump my stuff.
Like feather without feathers.
It's like you had a Luris companion.
Yeah.
But instead it's Gigantha.
But you don't. That's the problem. If only you had Luris, I would buy this deck. I would totally believe this was good enough.
I started putting this together at the height of Mono Green because it looked okay. I no longer think that this is okay. I think that there are much better ways to go about this.
I think Ancestral Anger is a very, very strong card.
It is quite good, yeah.
But that's as far as it'll go.
Yep. R. Rosansky. Is it Creativity, Gearhulk?
No, we did this.
Divide by Zero, Magma Opus, Mirix. Cool. Okay. Young Toast. Oh, okay. Yeah.
That's my rap name. That's my rap name.
Okay. I just wrote down this deck list the other night, actually. Because I was like, I think something like this could be good. This is Fires of Invention, Transmogrify into Atraxa. This one is also Urian. This also has the Orzhov invasion that reanimates a permanent, and also has an invasion of Alara to do stuff. There's just some stuff with this deck that I don't particularly like, where it's like, Do we need to play Urian? Is Birth of Meletus a playable Magic card? Stuff along those lines.
Yeah, I think one begets the other, right? Like that's how we've gotten to this point.
It does, absolutely.
And I agree with you. I don't really see the appeal. Like this deck, when I first started looking at it, I'm like, oh, this must be like a Karuga deck because everything costs 3 or greater. It's not. It's a Urian deck, and it just feels like this can be a little leaner.
You need Birth of Meletus, man. You can't play Karuga with Birth of Meletus, clearly.
Well, that is true. I mean, there are like Chain to the Rocks, and there's 4 Chain to the Rocks and the Bitter Reunion as well. So it's not quite that far. But I'm just saying, in terms of like when you're actually starting to interact with your opponent, you take your time with this deck for sure. And I don't know that I want to introduce 80 cards into that level of inconsistency.
I will say that this is another 4 Bitter Reunion deck, and you do have a World Spine Worm in the sideboard in case you want to actually like clock them. The thing that I do like about this is the 2 Sire of Insanities in the sideboard, though.
Okay, yeah, that's a cool one to see show up.
And I
was a big believer in this card for a long time.
Yeah, and I think that more of these creativity decks could take advantage of this, where you're talking about, for example, the Gear Hulk versions, right? Where you're like, I have to like sideboard out creativity because it's just like too slow and you don't have a window and blah blah blah, and that's because it doesn't outright kill them. So at what point do you actually like get to use this thing? Well, it just shifts your game plan to I need to shut them down in the short term and then just resolve creativity, and then they're just KO'd probably.
Yep, Sire's going to beat a lot of decks in this format straight up, I think. So
yeah, I'm specifically thinking about like Lotus Field, but yeah, just other decks in general, yes. And then I don't know, you still have stuff like Narset that can chill in play, or Fable or whatever. So you still have some stuff going on. Even after the Sire resolves, it's not like, all right, Mind Twist us both. Hope you don't draw an answer to this thing because then we're in a top deck war or whatever.
Yep.
So
no, that is cool.
Yeah, I think Sire is excellent. Next up, Squirtle 19. Number 19 of the Squirrel Squad. Urian, mono white, mid-range. I don't think I have anything nice to say about this deck.
It's my kind of nonsense, but I would like to do it in a lower powered environment than Pioneer.
Charming Prince, Ambitious Farmhand, Spirited Companion, Sarah Paragon, Elish Norn, Mother of Machines. This is like one of those decks where it's like, yeah, if your metagame is entirely like Rakdos or maybe mono green or whatever, maybe this is good. But there's just other things in the format where it's like, is it and Lotus Field and whatever. It's just like I can't imagine thinking that this is like a good deck to play into those,
No, I agree with you 100%.
It just needs something. It needs, I think we've talked about this in terms of modern or whatever, but it's like these white decks just have like no game. I think it was in context of like the white remand going to modern, right? Where it's just like that doesn't solve the issue, but it helps, right? It gives you something, and like that's exactly what you need.
Yeah, probably a little bit more than that though.
Yes,
even in Pioneer, I think.
Gazurma, Neoform, Atraxa. This is the like starter version with Hooting Mandrills and Tassiger. I think the later versions, I think they got rid of Hooting Mandrills. They kind of like got rid of one of the Delve cards to like play some Soul Flayers as a pseudo backup plan, but also still allow you to have the 6 mana Delve thing to Neoform into Atraxa. And I kind of like those ones better, but this is still fine.
Yeah. This deck seems very A+B, and when you do that, it probably feels very good. And when you don't, you reconsider your life decisions.
Right. So. But you also get to play like Thoughtseize Fatal Push. You have Stubborn Denial. So
good cards.
Yeah. I do like having that angle of attack for the format because it gives you a lot of game against, for example, the stuff that I said that mono white was not good against. So just starting from
that's why black forms the backbone of a lot of these archetypes.
Absolutely. So I like being able to start from there. It's like it's automatically gonna move you up like a slot or two in my tier list.
Yep.
Regis Hanger 49, more Waste Knots, no Root of Inscription, so a little bit lighter on discard. And yeah, 4 Shieldred, 2 Bankbuster. So a little less Waste Not nonsense, a little bit more mono black mid range. So I kind of like this. This is like a better fusing of the two, I think. What are you typing?
I just want to know how much Waste Not costs.
Oh, jeez. It costs 1 and a B.
It is presently $10 on StarCityGames.com for the Magic 2015 version. For the Magic 2015 foil, it is $30.
Of course.
And for Commander 2016, $10. Look at that. A very normal number of cards available for Waste Not.
Yeah, and $10 despite being, I wanted to say recently reprinted, and then I was like, oh, that's 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's not recent.
Yeah.
It's been a while, actually. This card could be prone to a spike very soon. This is my hot financial tip of the day.
No, the problem is
it could buy on Waste Not. Buy.
It could also be prone to a reprint at any point.
Yes. And then buy, and then next week sell. That's the way you have to do it these days, which is why I don't participate in this game anymore.
Too much work.
Yes.
All right. IP show, Boros, Burning Tree Emissary, Venerated Loxodon, Knight Errant of Eos.
8 Loxodons, baby. We're doing it.
7 locks. 7
Loxodon. Okay.
Yeah. Gleeful Demolition. We kind of talked about this. It's like, is this a thing you could be doing or should be doing?
It's a thing you can 5-0 league with, and that's all I really wanted it to be. So hats off to IP Show.
Yeah. Reckless Bushwhacker. Let's go. Succulent. More Fires of Invention, Enigmatic Incarnation. Basically just 4 color with 1 Rafine Sour. I feel like we talked about exactly this.
Yeah, this is the same deck.
Okay. Finally, good God. A. Hubbard, humans, but with some black for dire tactics. I wouldn't say it's like just for dire tactics because
there's Bloodsoak Champion as well.
Yeah, because I almost made this point earlier when we were talking about like ossification. It's like I've seen lists that do splash, and the card that they splash for is dire tactics as the removal spell, and this only kills creatures. Granted, instant speed, so I guess there's like some upside there or whatever. But it's like, is ossification the best thing? It's like, yeah, kinda.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, I don't think like the strain, and it's not a huge strain, but it is a strain on your mana base is actually worth the upgrade here. Like it's just not that much of an upgrade.
No, it's not. But you do get Bloodsoak Champion, which is maybe a slightly better 1-drop. Yeah. And then you get things like Campbell in the sideboard for combo-y things. So I get it.
Yeah, but the combo-y things are bringing in like some way to answer your creatures. That's what they do post-board. And I just wish I had a different way to try and stop their combo-y things than another creature.
Yeah, but the problem is you bring in like a Thoughtseize or whatever, and a lot of their stuff is just redundant anyway. So
yeah, that's why they're decent decks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that this like solves the problem really. And if I were playing white human things, rather than trying to find ways to like beat up on combo, I would rather try and solidify the Rakdos matchup and then address combo through other means, whether it's like Curse of Silence or whatever, you know.
Yeah,
you can do that in just mono white. And
find some hammers for those matchups instead.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
All right, that's it. That's 1 million Pioneer deck lists.
Well, I now know everything I need to know about Pioneer, and when I think about attending that next tournament, I am 1% more likely to do so because of this crash course you have given me.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. This is sort of why I want to talk about Pioneer, is to give like the general overview. And what I feel is happening now is a thing that just tends to happen in Pioneer, where it doesn't stay the format of the 2 ships passing in the night sort of combo-y decks for very long. Inevitably, it goes back to a place where there is interaction, people are playing to the board, and I don't know if that's out of people just like getting sick of playing Lotus Field against mono green or whatever, but the format is in a good place, at least from what I appreciate right now, where there's a lot of creature decks, a lot of interaction, not a whole lot of the I don't know, just like linear, no interaction combo decks or whatever. So that is
Mhm.
cool. But I also think that when it comes to crunch time, like for the RC in a few weeks, that
Yeah,
is going to change again.
I think so too. We saw a lot of that in like Modern's early years as well, where everyone would pretend like Modern was this cool, fair format, and we'd play John decks against each other, and then Pro Tours would come, and it's like, how do I find the best way not to interact with you?
Yeah, everyone's playing
And
Tron or whatever.
yeah, yeah, Tron, Ad Nauseum, Storm, just like for years and years, we did that same pattern over and over and over. And I think Pioneer will do the same thing.
Yeah, so for right now, it looks like, oh, things like rogues or like, is it Alrins, excuse me, dying after 2 hours of talking? Is it Alrin's Epiphany type stuff? It's like you can play these like fair to the board decks, like blue white control or whatever. And it's like, I would be very skeptical of that, you know? I think the litmus test still definitely exists. And when people sit down and try to find like the best deck to play for a big tournament with a lot on the line, they are more willing to register things like mono green or lotus if they think it's going to give them the best chance to win, And at that point, Fires of Invention, Atraxa with no interaction is not going to be a good choice. Like we've seen
Yep.
this already. It's already happened.
Yep, absolutely.
But yeah, for right now, if you're battling in like challenges or leagues or whatever, it's like, yeah, you're free to just mess around with like some mid-range deck that beats the other mid-range decks. And I think that that's cool. That's a good place to be. And the format can go back to that during like the RCQ season, right? But for the RCs and the Pro Tours and stuff, you have to be a little bit more ready to deal with people who are just there to kill you,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's spot on. And I think back to like attending the first round of RCs with my Lotus Field deck and being told how bad my deck was and how unplayable it was and how nobody plays Lotus Field, and me just chortling to myself inside and thinking about like how people are just consenting to be nice to you. They won't forever, and they will not interact with you, and they will kill you. And if you prepare for that now, you're probably better off.
Yeah, it was like Legacy had that thing for a while too, where it's like you could play a bunch of like really messed up combo decks, but there was this quote unquote gentleman's agreement to only play like Delver or Blue White Control or Maverick, right? And it's just like, if there was a Legacy Pro Tour, the format would look a whole hell of a lot different.
Yes,
right,
for sure.
So that's it. Keep that in mind. But for RCQs, for Moto, for just general mucking about, go out there, have fun. I do think that like Pioneer, last few releases have been very good. It has gotten to a good place. Just need better ways to address those combo decks, and make sure that they show up occasionally on weeks when they are in fact well positioned, and not when people just forget that they exist because they got bored of them and didn't want to pretend that like they didn't exist. I don't know.
Yep, exactly right.
That's it, man. All right, it's nap time. Well, I got correction. I have to feed my cats. Then it's nap time.
Yes, that's why you got bunted earlier, because they knew you were going to forget.
That was not the last time. He was just like 20 minutes later. He's like, yo, just checking in.
Yeah, just making sure you didn't forget.
Yeah, he's on the ground looking up at me right now. He's like, I see you moving. You're getting up. Does that mean?
Getting close to food time.
Oh, man. All right, that's it. Game.
Good luck.